Hi, welcome to Box Delights. This one's a little bit of an interesting venture for me because I don't currently have an internet connection, so I'm using my iPhone to create this short video to introduce you to I Say Holmes by Victory Point Games. I wanted to do this now because it's currently on Kickstarter, and what I've got here is a preview copy. This is a reprint, and it's kind of in their standard format. But what you're going to see with the Kickstarter is a new game. There's new artwork, I think from the same guy who did Darkest Night and Trieste, and also the card stock is going to change quality. And this is a first venture for Victory Point Games, who I'm a great fan of, because they're looking to improve their component quality, and they're going to use RJ Wiggins, a printing company that are using this format called Paper. This is their headquarters are in Paris, France. It's a very long and well-established company. They were listed on the London Stock Exchange, and were even part of the FTSE 100 at one point. So, you know, Victory Point Games have really made a big step here in this new venture of using Kickstarter and also going for this new upgraded components, because all their games look this way. I think we're still going to see the laser cut counters, which you should be familiar with from other games, but they are trying to, like I say, improve their card stock in particular. So this is why I wanted to get this one out there now, to give you guys a quick fresh look at I Say Holmes and why I've been so excited about this game and really looking forward to seeing its release, and even more impressed that they've gone for this game for their first step into this new world. Here we have all the components, primarily a card game, so we really are going to benefit from these new quality cards. The game is designed by Alan Emmerich, the founder of Victory Point Games, so that's a great choice to start with for him and his company. I Say Holmes is a card game for 3 to 8 players, and it's based on, of course, the classic adventures by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle of Sherlock Holmes. I Say Holmes is a phrase, it reminds me of the Nigel Bruce opposite Basil Rathbone's Sherlock Holmes, those movies from the 30s, I think. The components look really great. We've got the different tokens here, and what's nice to see here is these case closed book tokens with some familiar titles. You'll see we have His Last Vow, Speckled Band, The Valley of Fear, A Study in Scarlet, The Sign of the Four, and finally The Hound of the Baskervilles. And these have case points on them. We're going to be trying to work a case, trying to figure out which players are holding villain cards, and each of these different cards has case points on them, and these values get totted up, and depending on the number of case points will determine which one of these books. You can see they've all got different case point values. Which one of these case books will be closed? One of the first design elements I like is during setup, because this is a game for 3 to 8, Alan wanted to make sure that a certain number of cards were in play for the beginning of the game. So each of these cards, for example this one is called The Game is Afoot, Come Watson Come. This is a card that must be in play at the beginning of the game, and we've got this little number in the lower left, 3, and this refers to the number of players. So what you do is you start everyone's hands by dealing cards with numbers that are less than or equal to the number of players. So this, because it's 3 to 8, this card's always going to be in play. So you can see that some of these cards, like this travel card here, this train, is going to be in play. The village here with a number 5 on it will only be in starting hands if there's 5 or more players. Alright, so that's kind of a nice little design trick to make sure that everyone's starting hands are seeded with the cards that the designer Alan wanted to begin the game with. So for example, these are the villain cards. We've got John Clay, Professor Moriarty, Mr. Woodley, C.A. Milverton and Colonel Moran. Milverton here has the number 3. So one player at the start of the game, these have no numbers, so they're not going to be in any starting hands. At least one player is going to have this villain card. As players, your aim is to figure out which player has the villain and make an arrest and therefore close the case. Or the case could end if a player who holds a villain card manages to play it to the table, and this is called the villain escaping. Let's have a quick look at gameplay. So I've dealt out all the cards with number 3 on them. There were 18, so for a 3-player game. Okay, so that's 6 cards each, and that becomes your starting hand. So let's say this player here has the "Come on, Watson, the game is afoot" card. And what they do is they play this card, and this becomes the active card. So whoever has that card will kind of start things off. And it says here, you go first. Play proceeds clockwise. And what it says here is the next player has to kind of lead. So you're playing cards from your hand and other players are leading with cards from their hands. And this one says any travel. So we look at the next player and they can play any travel card. Now here's a travel card. This one here is the blue handsome cab. This one says we have a smart hansom swept us past a row of ancient colleges and finally turning into a tree-lined drive, pulled up at the door of a charming house. What I like about this game is that we've kind of got this storytelling element, right? And that's wonderful because, you know, Sherlock Holmes is a story. And this kind of follow the leader card play, where everyone's chaining these cards together, builds this story. So for the next player to continue the story, they have to play anything that this now becomes the active card, you see. So they have to play any similar location or a dense fog. Now, any similar location simply means a location with a border that matches the current side of this. This is called the location marker. It's placed here next to the draw deck. So all the rest of our cards form this draw deck, and we start the round in the city. There's also the country. Okay, so we start in the city, so they can play dense fog or any city location card. So it's player 3's turn. They will look, and they're looking for some locations. They've got England here. This is a country one as it goes. They've got a couple of travels, trains, another train, a clue and an alibi. Clue in his example of an information card. These allow you to gain some information about other players who might be the villain. And this one here is called an interrupt card. Interrupts are things where if a card gets played with some special instructions that perhaps target you, then you could play an alibi potentially that allows you to counter any penalties that those cards give you. Okay, so I haven't shuffled this deck yet, but what we can see is there's different kinds of locations. We have country locations. These are the green bordered ones, and then we have city locations. So there's a whole stack of these. So we have London, West End, Baker Street, Fleet Street, whatever. Okay. So as it stands, player 3 doesn't have a suitable card to play. So what this means is they have another choice. If they don't have a suitable card, there are these I Say cards. If you've got one of these, you can kind of play them out of story sequence to keep things going. But if you can't, then if you can't play any cards, or you choose not to play an I Say card that you've got in your hand, then you have to draw the top card from the draw deck, and this goes into your hand. All right, so this is how your hand gets reduced, and then drawn. So you've got to try and set things up to build this kind of sequence to keep the story running. The other thing to note about these I Say cards is that some can be played only while not moving, and others can only be played while moving. So at the moment we're travelling, the story says we're travelling in a hansom cab. So what you do to dictate the fact that you're moving is you have this moving token. You can place this on the location. So we're moving right now, which limits which I Say cards are permissible and which ones aren't. Let's give this a shuffle up and I'll show you perhaps potentially what might happen next. So we know player 3 can't go. They draw a card and they get this red bordered card, Constabulary. And this card is an action card, and it says that you may secretly pass one card to an opponent. Okay, and obviously when you play this as the active card, then these are the different types of card that could be played in response. Now we've got 7 cards in our hand now, and what's interesting is that if you start your turn with 7 or more cards, you can play what's called a deduction, which means you can play 2 cards in sequence to the story rather than just 1. So that's player 3 done. If the card they drew was permissible, then they should play it. If it's an I Say, it's kind of optional. You can play it or you can't play it. Okay, so it goes back to player 1, and the active card is the hansom cabs. That's still the active card. So they play any similar location or dense fog. Dense fog is a travel card, and we'll see that if one comes out. I don't think anyone's holding one right now. No, there's a few in the game. So now remember we're in the city, so we could play. We've got a couple here. We have 221B Baker Street, and we've got London. Let's play 221B Baker Street. So the story continues. We've ridden in our hansom cab and we've arrived at Baker Street, where there are a couple of comfortable bedrooms, a single large airy sitting room, cheerfully furnished and illuminated by 2 broad windows. So now it's player 2's go, and they've got a few more options now in how they follow. Now remember, player 2 is holding the villain card. For them to kind of win this round, they can play the villain card and have the villain escape. And the way to do that is they need to get rid of all their other cards. I think there's some cards that you can still hold and still be allowed to play your villain. Yeah, interrupt cards, I think, or other villain cards. So if that's all you've got left, you can at any point just say, right, I'm playing my villain card, villain escapes. Play stops immediately, case closed, scoring takes place. Alright, so they're going to try and get rid of some of their cards. And they've got to try and set themselves up in such a way to do so. Well, we can play a suspicion, so they could play this one here, suspicion. It says, select an opponent to draw 1 card and can be countered with an alibi. Okay, so we're at Baker Street. We look for consistency. Where there is a want of it, we must suspect deception. Okay, so the story is unravelling, and perhaps they choose player 1. Yeah, they don't have it says it can be countered by an alibi. Alright, let's choose player 2. So they draw a card, and this, if they wish, they can counter it. It says counters penalty when you are selected. Each player secretly passes 1 card to the right, and this card replaces the current card. Okay, in other words, the alibi becomes the current card, and you can pass one of your other cards around. So any cards you think that you can't chain together into the story very well. Alright, so that's what the alibi does. Let's assume they don't, and they get another red card. This time it's the detective. Okay, which isn't too bad because they can follow with that card. So let's say they do. It says select an opponent to draw 2 cards which can be countered by an alibi. It's it's not for me, my dear Watson, to stand in the way of the official police force. So this is how the game progresses. We're going to keep all playing cards. You're trying to get rid of all your cards. You're trying to get one of these red arrest cards, and in that way accuse or arrest the player you think has the villain card. Or if you're the player holding the villain card, then you're trying to get rid of your cards. Actually, let's see that in action, that arrest step. There's two ways to execute an arrest, and that's by having this red card and playing an arrest card from your hand. But the other way is called an impromptu arrest. If you manage to get rid of all your cards, except, just like the criminal, except for the interrupt cards, you get rid of all your cards. You're getting your hand down by playing these sequences to the story. Then you can do what's called an impromptu arrest. So if at any time you've got only interrupt cards in your hand, you must make an immediate impromptu arrest. You declare a player that you're going to arrest or accuse. They can counter that with interrupt cards themselves, and if you're correct, then the case is closed. And then any cards remaining in players' hands, you tot up these clue cards. So the earlier you can make an arrest and make it correctly, the higher these values potentially are, then the larger case points you're going to get. And if you flip these over, each one of these has a number of victory points that are going to be awarded at the game end. The other ways to score victory points is by having an escaped villain. So if Milverton escapes, you take this one and it has victory points on the back. If you play I Say cards, then you get one of these I Say tokens, and they have victory points on the back. And you've also got these telegrams, and these will come from, like these information cards. This one is disguise. An opponent must secretly show you their highest value card. This one is telegram. Give an opponent one telegram token. Okay, so it could be that these telegrams have negative victory points. Alright, so they've got these information cards that kind of allow you to do this, figuring out which player's got what cards. And the idea, I guess, kind of, is it kind of rummy style, I suppose? You're trying to build this story with these sequences of cards to try and get rid of all the cards from your hand in order to either escape or perform an impromptu arrest. It's a wonderful storytelling game. I'm really looking forward to seeing how they improve the components with the Kickstarter version. Do check it out. I'll leave a link in the description below. Again, apologies for the video quality, but until I get my internet connection back, this is the best I could do. But I really wanted to do it before the end of the Kickstarter campaign. I Say Holmes from Victory Point Games. Go and check it out. It's a great 3 to 8, so a lot of players. Great little game to, and I guess you could call it a filler, and a lovely story that can unfold and have lots of laughs with. That's it for now. See you next time.